wide receivers, because I think, I've only got 4 names down this week, and they're all not going to be widely available, but they're all really, really good higher end options, I think, at this point in the season to be able to go grab. And these are probably 3 of the 4 have been on rosters this season at some point or another. You may find only one of these guys being available. And if you're in a fab league, I'd be willing to spend up a little bit. Let's start out first with Quintin Johnston, the wide receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers. I highly recommended him a handful of weeks ago now when Mike Williams got hurt, but at the time we said, hey, it's going to be Josh Palmer first. Josh Palmer's going to get the first crack at things. He's going to have the opportunity. You're going to have to be patient with Quintin Johnston. A lot of people are not that patient, and they probably went ahead and dropped him in the meantime. And look, on Sunday night, he was definitely more a part of the offense. They definitely were designing things around QJ to get him the ball. And so I think there's a very good chance that he can continue to break out and be a second half difference maker. I don't know about league winner, but difference maker for sure for your fantasy team. And, we're getting kind of deep into the season now. There aren't going to be that many guys that emerge, typically in the second half of the year. It's the kind of guy where if I've got some fab left over in one of those leagues, I'm definitely willing to throw it at him. A lot of these guys, if you got strong conviction, now's a time to really spend up and use that fab, as well as that number 1 waiver claim. Quintin Johnston, like I said, he's not going to be too widely available, but he is definitely out there in some leagues. He is my number 1 guy overall on the waiver wire. Regardless of position, go get him. Demario Douglas is another guy I want to highlight. This guy a little bit more widely available for sure. Kendrick Bourne has definitely had some fantasy relevance as a flex option. Unfortunately, he tore his ACL. He is out for the season. That brings new opportunity. I am not going with Juju Smith-Schuster despite his touchdown that he had. He only had the 1 target and 3 catches. Give me the guy who's been more a part of the offense. Give me Demario Douglas. He had 7 targets last week and 5 catches. He can definitely just slide into that Kendrick Bourne role. They're very similar players. He's not a game breaker. He's not exciting like these other receivers I'm going to talk about. But if he is the number 1 option in an offense, even a lower volume offense, that still can definitely provide a lot of value as a flex. And we're in situations here where we're missing out on a lot of useful players this week. There's no Denver, which means there's no Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton. There's no Detroit, which means no Amon-Ra St. Brown. There is no Jacksonville, which means no Calvin Ridley or Christian Kirk. And there's no San Francisco, which means no Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel as he recovers from his injury. So Demario Douglas is definitely a guy who you may be picking up and putting straight into your lineup this week. Let me pull up who do they play. I don't have the schedule right in front of me. Oh, they play Washington. So it's a really good matchup. And they have Indianapolis the week after that. So back-to-back very good matchups here for Demario Douglas. Definitely a guy that you can plug straight into your lineup. Also, 2 more names, and these are more of that Quintin Johnston ilk. I would season-long prefer these guys over Demario Douglas, I think. Jahan Dotson for the Washington Football Red Commanders. He had a great game this past week. We finally got it after waiting all season for something like that to come out of him. He was a kind of mid-range pick back in August, and he's definitely disappointed. You know what? I think I would actually prefer Demario Douglas over Jahan Dotson. I think about that a little bit more. And then my last pick is Jaxon Smith-Njigba. JSN had that touchdown late in the Seahawks game. The first wide receiver taken this season, and he's been kind of a disappointment, but he had that great game 2 weeks ago when there was no DK Metcalf. I will say this, though. If you need someone to play this week, I prefer Demario Douglas over JSN in this week's or next week probably. But if you're looking as a stash guy, you got to throw on your bench for long term, I prefer JSN. So it's important. Know what you need. If you need to play this guy this week, Demario Douglas is probably your top option on wide receiver. QJ is number 1. Quintin Johnston is the guy. But if he's unavailable, Demario Douglas is probably your best pivot for this week. But if you're needing a guy for the rest of the season, that's where you go with Jahan Dotson or Jaxon Smith-Njigba.